It's 20 years this week that computer boffins gathered at a conference in Geneva to hear one of their peers introduce a new concept. That researcher was Tim Berners-Lee, and the event has been credited as being the big bang of the web, when the internet as we know it really began. One of the people in the audience that day was Pesce, now the Honorary Associate Professor in the Digital Cultures Programme at the University of Sydney.
Well, about 5 years before, he'd had this idea of being able to link information together between computers. And he took that idea and for the next 5 years ran with it and tried to talk people into using what he'd invented. After 5 years, he sort of had a critical mass of people, and he brought them together at CERN in Geneva, which is where he'd done his work, so where the atom smasher is, so that they could all see what they were doing. And it was the first time that all these little groups who had been doing little things coalesced around this idea that there is a web. So the thing that he really introduced was that there is a web, and you're all working to build it.
And you were more than just a face in the audience that day, because you had helped him to work out one of the problems he'd had in order to get to that point of introducing the web. Tell us about that.
So he actually had his own website where he said, here are some of the problems I'd like to see solved. One of the problems I'd like to see solved is a three-dimensional interface to the World Wide Web to make it look more like a video game. And I was working with my friend Tony Parisi in California. We solved that problem earlier in the year. I sent him an email saying, hey, Tim, we've done this. He says, would you please come to our conference in Geneva and show it?
We're seeing pictures of that conference now on the screen. What was the atmosphere like there?
It was electric. So they capped the registrations at around 300 because that was all they could fit into the auditorium at CERN. And when Tim was opening, he says, there are 400 people in here. And we all had a chuckle because people snuck in. They crashed the conference. And there was standing room only. And it was electric because everyone knew that this was going to be huge. It was going to change the world. And no one ever actually said it because we just all knew it.
And what was the talk around the conference and around Geneva, indeed, after the presentation?
It was really all about all the different ways that we could put the web to work. So Tim was very clever in that he got the first speaker who did the opening keynote, a man named Dr. David Choum. He showed something called DigiCash. Now, we talk a lot about Bitcoin today, this electronic anonymous currency that people can use to trade with on the web. It was actually done 20 years ago, and Dr. Choum actually showed a transaction happening on the web, a web that barely existed, as part of his demo. And it was so completely beyond what we'd been thinking. But Tim had already been thinking, actually, if we want this to be something that's worldwide, we have to have people trade in it.
So a lot has happened over the last 20 years. The internet now looks nothing as it did when Tim Berners-Lee got to his feet. Where do things go from here?
Well, the big change over the next 5 years is that the web's going to come to everyone. Right now, there's about 1.5 to 2 billion people using the web regularly. The majority of those are now using them on smartphones. Over the next 5 years, we will go from about 2 billion smartphones to around 6 billion smartphones in the world, most of those in China, India, and Africa. And the number of people using the web on a daily basis as a result will more than double. So that's the first step. And then after that, we start connecting the web to everything, the Internet of Things, as we actually start to connect every possible device.
Pesce, thank you.
Thank you.